Good morning to you. Welcome to News Views. Once again, I'm Krashesky talking about the race for Chicago mayor again. Gery Chico is one of the leading candidates for mayor of Chicago. He's a man who has actually never held elective office, but he has filled a variety of key appointive offices. You're watching him here actually being endorsed by the union that represents Chicago firefighters and paramedics. He's also been endorsed by the Fraternal Order of Police as well. A little bit about his background. He grew up in Chicago, attended public schools here. He's a graduate of the University of Illinois at Chicago and Loyola University Law School. He was Mayor Daley's chief of staff back in the 90s, board president of the Chicago Public Schools, also then president of the Chicago Park District, and chairman of the City Colleges of Chicago, which is the title he held prior to deciding that he was running for this job, mayor of our city. Gery, it's great to have you here once again. Welcome to News Views.
Thank you.
Well, let's go back to what happened this past week first. And I want to get your reaction to the city's response to this blizzard. Did you like what you see? Did not like what you see? Was it handled appropriately? Obviously, it was a big challenge. But did the departments do their job? Did the mayor do his job?
Well, we have to remember, this was a unique storm. It's one for the books in Chicago. You had a wind like I've never seen before coming off the lake. And we have to keep that in mind when we assess any of these actions taken by the city. One, I thought that the city, the police officers, the firefighters, the streets and sand workers worked incredibly well during this crisis. Lakeshore Drive's a different issue. I'm not going to second guess whether we should have closed it or not because I wasn't privy to the data at that time. That was Ray Orozco. He's a fine man. He'll make a good decision when given the information. But here's the issue. The response time after it was clear that the roadway broke down was not good enough. And that's just clear. I mean, we're still getting calls from people who were stuck there for 8, 9 hours, right. 10 hours. And in some cases, there were very threatening conditions. There was a gentleman with a newborn baby in his car. And we have to be better at anticipating those things and responding to them in the future.
If I get this right, the city department heads are saying we didn't shut down the drive. Roscoe said this. We didn't shut it down because it was a major avenue for getting people out of the city.
One of the biggest roads in the city.
At the same time, you know, the storm hits, 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and they're outgunned almost immediately as soon as the accidents start happening up there on the north side and down on the south side, too. So I know what you're saying. It's a different matter. What could they have done differently as you look at it now? And we're armchair quarterbacking here, I know.
Yeah, and that's always the problem. Having been a chief of staff, I've been in that situation before. You try to have as many plans in place so that you're not making this up as the crisis is unfolding. I think every time one of these situations occurs, you do the forensics and you learn from it so that you don't have it repeat again in the future. What might we do in the future? One, you have to decide whether or not it's just prudent to close down the drive. But realize, as you just said, you're going to push all that traffic from a major thoroughfare onto the other north-south parallel streets. That could have caused gridlock there as well. So that's why I'm not second-guessing Orozco. But in the future, we have to be ready to pounce on an accident that takes place, tow the bus, tow the car, have an armada of plows go back down that drive, clear it up so that people can be on their way. But realize, again, this was an immense storm. I never saw anything like it in my 54 years in Chicago.
It's incredible. I want to move on here because I want to hit as many issues as possible as we can. Let's talk about city finances. We know that the projected budget deficit here is over $600 million. So what do you do? And I'm going to ask this in a double question here because at the same time I know you're hammering away pretty well at Rahm Emanuel's plan to perhaps tax some services, luxury services. We're not quite sure, perhaps. But what's the answer here? The money's got to come from somewhere.
We're not going to get this budget solved by little tweaks on the margin, and that's what we've been hearing so far in this campaign. This budget requires a full overhaul. It's got to be looked at from top to bottom. We have to look at how city government is organized right now. I'm going to propose a couple of things. Number one, if I hear one more story from somebody who's trying to get a permit about opening a business and it takes months, a year to open that business, I'm going to tell you that the organization we have in that building is not right for a priority of bringing business and jobs into the city. And I aim to change that. Secondly, when I want to hire 2,000 police officers, for example, the cost of that in that budget of $6.5 billion is 2-3%. If you can't find 2 to 3% out of a city budget, I say you shouldn't run for mayor.
And you're saying it doesn't necessarily have to come from the police department. It can come from other areas?
Well, we're going to start in the police department because there are 8 levels of management between district commander and superintendent. It's too much. That has to come down. That's more than the U.S. military. It takes too long. It costs too much. We have to get rid of that.
But can you find enough money for 2,000 cops, new
over
cops?
Over 4 years, yes. I said that I would hire 2,000 net new police officers over 4 years. That's 500 a year. The last time the city ever put any police officers of that magnitude on the budget, I did it in 1993, 1,000 police officers. So, yes, it can be done.
Would you be in favor or against reallocating your current resources of police officers among the districts?
I want to see a neighborhood-oriented policing program. I don't want to see everything brought downtown and centralized because we're depleting the districts. I want to go to a system where a district commander is given the appropriate resources to police and keep that neighborhood safe, and then we hold the district commander accountable. That's the way we used to do it. I think it's right to do it again. People don't see the police in their community.
I know you're a big supporter of programs like Ceasefire, which has gone out. They see violence as an epidemic and try to track it down that way. Use even former gang members to work with current gang members to stop violence before somebody pulls out a gun. This is the very same program that even in Springfield, for instance, had its funding cut. Where's the money coming for all this?
Well, I said we're going to have to overhaul the city budget. Why? You have to overhaul. You can't just play with the margins and little line item allocations. Won't get it done. Because to deal with that budget deficit and to fund what we're looking to fund, like Ceasefire, community policing, and the number of police officers, you have to rearrange city government. So anybody that tells you, I'm going to move 20 million here, 10 million there, you're kidding yourself. This requires an entire overhaul of government.
Got to take a short break right now. We'll be right back with much more from Gery Chico in just a moment.